Anybody else wants to come up and play a little bit with the rust that we have here?
Good question. Are we allowed to park anywhere inside the dirt lot?
Yes.
Sure.
If you have your books, you guys can open up your books, take a look at some of the things that are happening nationwide. You also have a 1-year questionnaire and a 5-year questionnaire inside your book. Take a look at some of those questions. That way you guys can see just what a design professional should be asked. About 25 standard questions to make sure everybody's doing the same job. So whether you have a good architect or a bad architect, a good engineer or a bad engineer, if they have to answer those questions, the liability is there. If they just give you an opinion, then you never know what they're giving you. So read some of those questions. You're going to see why the 1 years and the 5. We have anybody here from San Francisco? We have also the 604 and the 908. We have another one that we made. San Francisco. So we have San Francisco has a 1 year and a 5 year. So we have a few of those.
We can say the zaniest thing.
So you have both the Oakland and the San Francisco ones here.
It's like I don't have any desire.
So while we're waiting for the donuts to arrive and the coffee, it doesn't mean that you guys can't ask a few questions. You're more than welcome to ask a few questions. But if you want to, as they say, take a look at what rust looks like, we brought several pieces. A lot of these pieces are actually used in court cases. I'm an expert witness in a lot of fire escape injuries and fatalities. And my first case was a fireman in New York City. Fell through 3 sets of treads and went down 1 story, climbed back up, saved the woman and the child up on the upper floor, got him out. But then sadly was injured for the rest of his life. The key to that story that we'll talk about later is that not only did he get workers' comp for being hurt on the job because he was injured and not paralyzed, but he injured his back. He got to sue the owner directly because it was negligence on the owner for not maintaining the fire escape. So he actually won a separate case and they settled because he actually sued the owner saying, "I didn't get hurt on the job. You left a landmine."
Oh, no problem. I'm comfortable now.
At your place. And you hurt me, not the fire escape. The fire escape is supposed to be maintained. So that opened up. But just in the past years, I've done a lot of cases, and they've paid out over $100 million in injuries. We'll talk about that later on. About fire escape fatalities, injuries, and the insurance companies are starting to get wind of this because they're concerned now because some of the very fire escapes that we guys are dealing with are not certified correctly. And so what happens is people are getting hurt, not only firemen, but tenants, window washers, people repairing fire escapes. So the class hasn't started yet, so if anybody has any general questions, you're more than welcome to ask. We have Alan's here. He's a registered architect in the state of California, so he's also a certified fire escape inspector. So today's class is also going to get you to make sure we get all your information. We're going to give you a nice certificate that says you've taken a fire escape awareness course, and that puts you ahead of the game a little bit, knowing just what is required of a fire escape. So it's a 6-hour course. First 3 hours this morning is for us to go over a lot of stuff. The second half is more hands-on. We'll probably go play on the tower and look at other inspections that we've done in your area. Yesterday we had a few guys go out with us. How they here? Yeah, well they hit as far back in the room as they could, but we looked at an 11-story yesterday in Oakland, down at Rancagua, right? And it wasn't a train wreck. Didn't have all the nice rusty pieces that it was in actually pretty good condition. And we'll also talk about load testing today. So once we get the go ahead. But so today is the first part of the morning. We'll talk about a lot of different questions. We expect interaction. The afternoon we'll go look at the tower and see how that is. Make sure nobody's going to get hurt on your tower. And more hands-on Some of you will be here for 3 hours, some of you will be here for 6. And we did teach a class here probably 7, I don't know if it was 7 to 10 years ago, but again, I told Manny the only name I remember was Cesar Avila. He's now a fire marshal somewhere else, but was anybody here in that class I taught 7 to 10 years ago? Did the same thing, we walked, you were? Perfect. So we did a walk around downtown, same thing, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of good information is getting out, but the key is that things has changed and that the code has finally changed. Just so you know, the fire escape code has been held hostage by the building department for 100 years. And in the state of California, there hasn't been a 5-year inspection in the entire state of California on any fire escape other than in certain cities, like San Francisco has a 5-year, and it wasn't put up by the fire department, it was put up by housing. And whether it was enforced or not, so unless there was an accident or something major happened on some building in the entire state of California, there's never been a 5-year inspection rule for 100 years. So this is why your confidence level on fire escapes is what? These recruits are being taught what? In case of fire, don't use the... Right? And what's the main reason? Is because some of the connections, they keep getting thinner and thinner in the middle. When you step on some of these connections, so we'll cover that in the class. So that's, but finally in 2012, and we'll cover that in our code review. Finally in 2012, you know, the IFC said, let's start inspecting every fire escape in the entire U.S. every 5 years. But not every state adopted it yet. So here we are in 2019. Alan will cover code today and how it does. It's on the California code, but it hasn't been adopted yet. Anybody have any news on the adoption of whether or not it's going to get adopted? When it's going to get adopted? So today it's going to be hopefully a good class with a lot of interaction. Just be aware that the main thing that we're going to try to do is save the lives of the tenants who have to use this and the lives of the firemen who have to do this part. Anybody smell coffee yet? Donuts yet? No? Patty?
You can start, we have 4 more people coming in.
Perfect.
So we need to make some more room here.
Bring them in.
Please make sure you sign the attendance roster. We have some donuts coming. Low calorie. You put number 2 on that one for me, please. Here's Catherine, she got the donuts. Yeah.
The class can begin. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been in the business since 1971. Look good for 80 years old. My dad is still in the business. He's 82 years old. And I got dragged into this when I was 12. So I have a master's degree in reverse stupidity. Don't ask me how to do it right, but I know a million ways to do it wrong. And then I have to reverse engineer that and say, hey, it can't be, you know, the welding witch doctor way forever, because obviously people are dying and getting hurt, and there's a lot of liability associated with doing it wrong. So that's who I am. I've been in that. So that's why I founded the National Fire Escape Association, because as I started reverse engineering this, I was finding information that nobody had. I would ask individual city individual building departments for information. They had none. Because here's the reason why. In the 1890s, they were building fire escapes. They built fire escapes all the way up to around 1915. Okay? So every fire escape you see in the entire U.S., all of LA, all of Chicago, all of New York, all of the major cities were built in factories. And then they changed the code, they said no new fire escapes. Because it was a bad idea, because nobody was maintaining them on the outside. So all new construction after that started becoming so that if you dug a hole in the ground, you had to put 2 staircases inside plus an elevator. Sprinkler systems came along, so there's all these other things that came along that says, we really don't need these outside fire escapes. So in 1915, you just started maintaining the existing stock that existed out there, and you also started to put in fire escapes on existing structures that were being converted. So if you had a beautiful mansion that was monstrous, and you wanted to make it into 4 apartments, guess what you used to satisfy the code? We'll cover this later. Fire escapes. So fire escapes went from manufacturers of corporations building fire escapes all over the country to the local ornamental ironwork in 1915. We carried it forward a little bit and forward a little bit so that it got lost. So the art of fire escape building was burnt, destroyed in 1915. And for 100 years you just had to maintain it. But yet they left no rules on how to inspect it. They left no rules on how to maintain it. And they basically allowed you to use this as a stopgap measure. This is the welding witch doctor. Okay? And then what happened was they expected these fire escapes all to be gone by 1950. Buildings were all going to be demolished. We're going to live in the new space age. And every one of these buildings were just going to go away. So they waited for fire escapes to go away. But what happened? It was an invention. You guys have seen all this, right? What was the invention that changed everything? Oh, duct tape, bubble gum, zip ties, wire, and they started holding these buildings together for 50 years beyond what they expected those buildings to last. You guys have some buildings that you walk in and fire escapes is not the biggest problem on that building. How it still stands up is beyond your ability to acknowledge. So, but the fire escape has gone, and they're 100 years old. Every fire escape you're going to be playing with nowadays is on average 75 to 125 years old. Never had a 5-year inspection in the state of California and all the states unless something happened. So like San Francisco, they have their 1 year and the 5 year. Boston had a tragic accident that occurred, and this is what happened for them, but it happened in 1973 or 75. And it became a Pulitzer Prize winning photograph, but it basically captured the thought of every firefighter out there. They're getting on these fire escapes trying to save people that have not been maintained. That fireman survived by grabbing the ladder with one hand. She fell, and her niece fell with her. Look at all the steel following her. And then when she hit the ground, she died. Her niece landed on her and survived, and the fireman survived at the very top, 4 stories up. And so Massachusetts became one of the first states that was basically an IBC state, and they put a 5-year rule on fire escapes. You must inspect fire escapes after this. So it's usually some major event that's going to occur that's going to make everything happen, including Philadelphia, who had a tragic accident that happened a few years back in 2014, 2015. And then it was only after that they said, hey, we should inspect all our fire escapes and have them all restored and repaired and certified by January 1. I'm sorry, July 1, not January 1. Give them a little time, 2017. And they gave that order in 2016. It's 2019. They've barely touched 10% of their stuff. Okay? So, the game plan today is for us to go through and look at some of the things that are happening nationwide, that are happening everywhere, including your area. Okay? So this is the picture that I've talked about. This one, a Pulitzer Prize for the photographer. Engineers Inspector Summary Video. Here we are in
This is
LA.
an examination that I did
Farscape
on 1
that
year.
just recently
that I
has
had to do a
passed
5-year
a
on.
1 year
Listen to this.
exam. But now, as we look closer and it's going through its 5-year, you can see a few things that we're going to discuss that need to be done. So let's, first of all, the fire escapes must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. As you can see, this fire escape has not been kept painted. It needs a full paint job, even though it passed on a 1 year. Okay? So, fire escapes must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. Why the paint? The paint is what seals these joints, seals these connections from water getting into them and rotting out the structural. That's the reason for paint. So, somebody passes it without paint on it, with all the rust, you know? So, that's the first thing that's a lot of times is not done on a 5-year. I'm not done on a 1 year, but it's done on a 5-year. Now, let's take a look at the rest of the fire escape in itself. Regarding the paint, it still has lead paint. Anything older than 1978 is presumed to have lead by the EPA. So whoever's going to scrape and paint this must have an EPA renovator's license. They're not going to de-lead this fire escape. They're just going to collect all the proper chips under EPA rules and guidelines, which has a $37,500 fine, and make sure that those are properly disposed of. And then they can paint. And then you want to seal all the cracks and crevices, all the joints. You want to seal it from water intrusion. So this, again, this fire escape passed a 1 year. Let's take a look at why it wouldn't have passed, it didn't pass a 5-year. And if it can't pass a 5-year, it can't pass a 1 year, and we'll show you why. So, look at all the damage in there, okay? So that's not properly connected into the building, and that's something that they covered up with the cement stucco. And as you can see, that's fully exposed, and that should have been identified by a Reg 4 inspector to say, hey, I can't give you a 1 year because I see some other things on this fire escape that need a 5-year inspection in order for me to continue with my 1 years. All right, so let's go down slowly. I can already see the cables up here. These look like original cables, and I'll be able to see them down below. And the cables look to be in good order, but they are old enough that I would think that replacement would be considered at this time. So that's a major issue with rust right there. Look at all this rust right here, along, underneath all of these pieces. What they look like when you grill them, they look like this. So that's one that's already popped. That's one that's already popped. That's one that's clearly popped, and yet it passed the 1 year. How could it pass a 1 year? Okay, checked all the connections, all original hardware. The hardware is supposed to be changed every 25 to 35 years in the lifetime of a fire escape. So you're supposed to see these square head bolts all removed, and new hex head bolts, but these are original the day it went up. So if this building is 50, 75, 100 years old, these are the original connections. And the reason you keep it painted so that water doesn't get in there. Look at all that water getting in there. And it does this, it pops. So look, I figure you go through, see the shaft there still? Look at the nut. So it's a false. And if I look underneath here, you'll see. So this is very common. All right, let's take a look at the tubes, the clips. Rust jacking is happening underneath here. So these are some of the things that a 5-year inspection would identify. Look at all this. It's accumulating rivets, but look at all the accumulation. That is water that's going to get in there, and it's going to keep attacking these rivets all day long. Okay, let's look underneath. So that area is uninspectable. There's a through bolt. There's a through bolt, and we clearly know that we have some issues because they didn't paint this. That some materials, even though they look good, even though the bolts are here, that hit the nuts. You can clearly see that some of these are already popped, so now all of them is suspect. We have to verify one at a time. They've also sealed the lower connection into the building, and that's a through bolt there too. That one you can't even see anymore. They stuck it right over it. And as you can see how deep this is. Okay, so that's all stuck. It's a nice looking building, but that's the things you have to look at. Okay, coming down. Accumulation. All this accumulation is just going to trap water and send. Look at all the rust jacking that's happening on that clip. Not as much so, but Anybody doing a Reg 4 inspection 1 year would have identified some structural issues that would be called for a 1 year. I mean, the 1 year to become a 5 year. Accumulation, rust jacking, okay, coming here, and this one, you can already see the rivet already popped. The rivet already popped. Okay, so when you see the rivets already popped, they can't do a 1 year. Alright, so looking underneath, all these treads look good, but knowing that there's accumulation from above, it's only a matter of time before they eat the rivets. That's just a hammered rivet. That's an indication that this is 50 to 75 years old. So a lot of times, fire escapes that are this old, they're supposed to have a change. Welded connections. See, this is supposed to be a bolted connection. So in order for me to gate this, unless I X-ray or load test this, I can't sign off a 5 year, but as soon as I put a piece of metal above this, bolt it there, I don't care about this weld anymore. Alright, the handle that releases this. It's kind of in a weird location I have to go, and again, this is the 1 year pass. So as you can see, it's a 1 year annual. Okay, so they would have, had they seen, look at all the rust jacking in that corner right there. Okay, that person who inspected this would have said, I can't pass this on a 1 year. Look at all the rust jacking inside here. Rust jacking in that connection holding the whole entire stairs. Inability to verify certain connections. Okay, there's a plate here. Okay, and this is the release. The release is in the wrong side, and it looks like it's ready to pop. Okay, so definitely needs a paint job. Water accumulation is good behind it. Another rivet that's popped right there. So this is what occurs when you inspect a fire escape on a 1 year. You're really looking for a couple things on a 1 year. Does this ladder, when I release it, go down slowly, 2 to 3 feet per second, hit the ground and stay down? Can I do that twice? Is the mechanism in a good space? Does it have a chain? Does the windows work getting to the fire escape? So a Rec 4 is a system, so you're verifying that the system looks good all the way up to the roof. And your walk looks like it's been kept painted, and that any moving parts do drop, and that you can get from the roof to grade. As soon as anybody sees something that is an indication that there's a structural concern, it turns into an automatic 5 year. Okay, so knowing that you see the rust pop, pieces of steel pop, the fire escape has all original hardware, has not been kept painted, usually is an indication that they still get paid for their 1 year inspection, but it's a 5 year inspection now. Okay. I'm going to have another one just like this on the back side. This weight box has to be greased so that it slides properly, and at the same time we need to verify that the cables are in good order. They seem to be in good order, but a lot of times if this is the original cable, they want to swap these out. They're inexpensive, and you want to grease the cables up there also, and the pulleys. Okay, on a 1 year. That's the routine maintenance, is to grease it, make sure it drops 2 to 3 feet per second, and that this mechanism here is in a way that people can use it. And a lot of times this mechanism will be most likely somewhere here, so that when you turn it, it turns away from you and you can access. And then again, the changes drop. Okay? And a very important piece of information, during any construction, all fire escapes must be certified first under NFPA rule 1910.37, that you must have 2 means of egress during construction, buildings under construction.
Actually,
Any questions?
OSHA, not NFPA, OSHA 1910.
490.
I misspoke there, it's OSHA 1910. All right, so I'm going to release you to the donuts in a second. Sure.
I'm Alan Toll. I'm an architect. I work with fire escape engineers and also with the fire escape inspector. And what we're showing here in LA, they have their Reg 4 1 year inspection program. That's all they have. They haven't even adopted a 5 year inspection. So what Cisco's showing here is that the 1 year inspections are very limited. Their protocols are very limited. And you can even see, we've kind of put together some mock-ups of what a 1 year and 5 year can look like. And so, 5 years much more hefty. That's what we're certifying. 1 year, these Reg 4 guys are doing exactly what they're asked them to do, but they're not really doing that at all.
So the reason why I'm comparing LA to San Jose, to Oakland is the following. So LA, to get a license there, you have to take a course, you have to take a license with Los Angeles, pay $1,000. And the 1-year inspection, when you get a rec for, you're a tester, an assemblies tester, not an inspector. And if you use the word inspector in LA, they'll come down on you hard. I mean, it's one of the, they don't want you to ever call yourself an inspector, because a design professional inspects a fire escape structurally. A 1-year assemblies tester tests the system. So that's the main thing you're going to take out of today's course. A tester is supposed to go to the roof, climb over the roof, use the whole system, release the ladder or the cantilever twice, prove that it works, reset the system, and put a sticker on it saying that it's structurally sound and it has been kept painted, because he's coming off a 5-year already. Somebody already did a 5. So you don't want a 1-year guy verifying structural issues or problems, because it's beyond his capability, his training, and his insurance. A 1-year tester, if that fire escape fails, will be in court and sued beyond his assets, because he's a tester. So in the questionnaires that I put together, we'll cover it later on, there's 15 questions that are test questions. Does this look good? Your opinion that this looks good? Because he verifies that the 5-year was done right. Because if at any time a 1-year tester shows up at a job like this, the first question on your 1 year, it says, do you have a 5-year? So if you look at the Oakland one, a 1-year can't be done unless there's an existing 5-year. The second thing you should be doing is marrying this 5-year to sprinkler testing. And why is that? Because OSHA says that in order to perform an activity, you must do it on a certified platform. Not related to fire escape. Everything's certified, whether it be the roof, whether it be this floor, whether it be the outside deck. So guess where these standpipes are on? They're on a fire escape. So what do they need? So all fire escapes with standpipes should be married together with the same time with a sprinkler. Because what's first, the chicken or the egg? Well, you have to have a certified platform that allows a sprinkler guy to go out there and test. So you marrying that to, you're going to already start getting some additional people helping getting these things back under control. So these 5, 10, 15-story buildings that have outside standpipes, the fire escape under OSHA 1910.37 and 1926, right? These are 2 OSHA codes, says you must have a certified platform during renovations, alterations, repairs, or anything. So that's the first piece. But now, what more important is, this is LA. This tester, did he bring a seeing-eye dog with him? This is one of the reasons why firefighters don't trust fire escapes. Because if you've been there, you were trained, right? While at the academy, while you're fighting fires, while you're on these towers, they say, in case of fire, don't use the... Right? Don't use these fire escapes. Why? Because for 100 years, who controlled it? Building department did. What did they do with it? They said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if we run across it, then we'll fix it, we'll deal with the owner. For 100 years, in 2012, they said, this is crazy. It's not just here, it's everywhere in the US. They said, we need the 5-year rule. In 2012. You know how long the states have been dragging their feet adopting the IFC 1104? I don't know, long enough. You guys haven't adopted it either. Yet it's clearly adopted, it's in your California fire code, but then you haven't adopted 1104.
We are.
So, you have?
We are.
We are? When?
2019, January. It just got submitted.
So it's 2019 or 2020?
It's the 2019 code, but it'll be in 2020.
Round of applause for
Oakland. Major
So
accomplishment.
basically, Christmas gifts, you'll have to hold on to your Christmas tickets till January 1, or you can start using them now and say, listen, I can ticket you now. I can come back angrier in January 1. Right? But otherwise, we're applying it now. But January 1, so it's great news. So that says everything has to have a 5-year. So, but who they give it to? Building or fire? Because building builds, fire does what? Maintains. And in 40 out of 50 states, when I teach this class, it's fire prevention. Why? Because your lives are at risk. This is, you guys care. 10 out of 50 states, it's building departments. They care. But do they care about fire extinguishers? No. So that's all. So, beautiful that it's in January 1, 2020. It's already been adopted now. The 5-year rule is in place. Get out there, walk in. And by the way, how do you write a violation? You walk in and say, I need a copy of your affidavit. That's all you say. What affidavit? Your 5-year. Oh, it's in the back. You want to see it? Because, you know, it's great. I painted it. I've been keeping it painted. No, I don't want to see it. I want you to get a design professional. So, here, if you're going to write a violation, here's what you got to remember. You can't write a scrape and paint violation. That was what they wrote in 1915. You have to write this violation. So write these 3 words down. I need you to inspect it. Because they'll call you with questions. I need you to inspect, repair if needed, load test, or other evidence. That's all I want from you. So, I want you to inspect it. I want you to repair if needed. Load test or other evidence of strength certificate. We're going to talk about what load testing and what other evidence means today. So, in LA, they've only done, you know how big LA is? No, none of the buildings have had a 5-year ever, unless there was something major that happened in the building in LA. Feel comfortable now? Every fire escape on every hotel, every 15, 20-story structure has never had a 5-year done to it. Plenty of paint though. So you see how lackadaisical 1 years can become? Because they created this Reg 4, and some of the questions covered structural concerns, which is outside their scope, outside their license, and outside their insurance qualification. So if the insurance companies knew they were signing off on 1 years and covering structural questions, what do you think would happen to those 1-year inspectors and their insurance? So there's an insurance requirement that you must have to do a 5-year. Okay? So what happened up here in San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, San Jose? The 1 years started becoming the de facto 5 years. Owners called up and said, hey, I need an inspection. So the 1 year guys went out and did 1 years, submitted to the city, and hoped that nobody did what? Raised their hand and said what? You didn't have a 5-year. So they used that rule, because we don't have a 5-year until 2020. So it's like, well, there's no 5-year. This is the best you can get. There's no 5 years. So they were kind of half true, and they wrote that for how long? Till today. Or 2000. Whichever way you want to. So the 1 year is a tester. Wouldn't it be great when you show up at a building? I'm going to let you have the donuts in a second. Say, hi, I'm here for the 1 year. And they hand you the piece of paper. And you know who can, and by the way, we made it simple. You know who can do the 1 years? Owners can do the 1 years. Agents can do 1 years. Okay? Or others qualified to the building inspector. So some of the owners are going to be there and say, well, I don't have the money, I can't. Well, the 1 years, which is done after a 5. So think about this. After you've got a clean bill of health on a 5-year from a structural engineer or a registered architect with insurance and signed and sealed and load tested, it's a look-see by who? After a 5-year, will you let the owner of a single family or 2-family look at his own fire escape? Doing a 1 year. Sign off on it while you're there? Because he's gonna go up, come down, drop it twice, hang to the paper. The owner's agent, which is the management company, right? None of them are gonna wanna go up and over the ladder and do, or they're gonna get the 1-year guys that are out here. 4, they can do the 1 years and drop the ladders and grease and do accordingly, right? They're all here. All right? So that'll keep the price down. Who can do the 5 years? Design professionals. So good or bad architects, good or bad engineers, good or bad others. And we'll talk about others, what that means. You know, people that are certified through a specialty company or through that are specifically in that business, which you still have to approve. Got it? That's what it says in the law. So I'm gonna move on to the rear inspection, because if you thought the front one was good, the back one is not too far off, but he's certified both, because the guy was on a hurry that day. He looked at the front one, signed off on the back one without even looking at it maybe, and but 2 minutes, you know, let's give you 5 minutes, get some donuts, bring you. Anybody have any other unique questions while we're waiting for everybody to get back? Questions in LA, because you have to pay $1,000 to get a license in LA, renew that license every 3 years, pass did you pass your first test? No? Even my architect,
That's my test.
who failed his first exam on a 1 year, because they won't allow a design professional to do 1 years without, so it's a fee collection. But again, the 1 years, he had to go take a license to become Reg 4 certified for a 1 year, which is a look-see. But yet they don't have any 5 years, unless it's called for by the building department, or something, a tree hits the fire escape, or something major occurred. Okay, major restoration going on. So it's a little out of whack, but to keep it simple, every fire escape must have a 5 year. And then for the next 4 years, what do you have? 1 years. How confident are you now in 1 year if there's been a true 5 year done to it? Who can do the 1 years? Owners, agents, or others acceptable to the city official, right? And are they licensed properly and insured properly? To walk up and over the roof, come down, drop the ladder twice, grease things, and verify that the 5 year was done correctly? If a 1 year guy is doing is doing a 1 year and he sees all kinds of damage to the fire escape, can he continue? So he failed. They failed the 1 year, and it triggered a new 5 year. It's all simple. It's very simple. All right. So let's take a look at this same company, and I think they were out of Culver City, because we had done a Reg 4 class, and we had the Novella there in class, and we had 5 or 6 Reg 4 companies. We did a Reg 4 class, and they wanted to find out who did that. Who did the inspection? It was a guy out of Culver City. But this is the backside of it now.
And Culver City is not part of.
Farescape Engineers Inspect the Summer Video. Here we are in Los Angeles. We're conducting a 5-year inspection on a Farescape that was just recently passed this month on a 1 year. Let's take a look at what's required on a 5 year and what's required on a 1 year. Farescapes must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. So obviously this Farescape has not been kept painted. Plenty of evidence that it has not been kept painted. And because of that, it shouldn't have passed the 1 year. Because it must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. It's one of the requirements. Why do you keep it painted? You keep it painted so that water doesn't get into the connections. So any Farescape that has not been kept painted is automatically making every connection suspect, above and beyond other things. So let's take a look at this Farescape now. Just in continuation with the paint though, EPA has deemed that any Farescape older than 1978 is deemed to have lead paint. So you don't have to de-lead the Farescape, but there's precautions that you have to take. So that when you scrape and paint this Farescape, you must have an EPA renovator's license. That EPA renovator's license, if you don't have it, can have a $37,500 fine from the EPA associated with that. So, let's go on to the structural. If I was doing a Reg 4 single inspection and I was coming up here, you have to look at the entire Farescape system, so you can either start at the top, climb up and over, come down, or from down here you do your inspection, then you go up to the roof and do your inspection. that ladder must be properly attached to the roof on the other side. That's the gooseneck. Looking down, I'm looking for evidence of rust, because I gotta make sure it's been painted. It has not, so that's my first indication that it's not gonna pass the break 4. I'm looking for any internal rust. There's some internal rust here on this one. This would automatically kick this into a 5-year. And then I would see missing pieces. So there's a clip there, and there's a clip there, but there's no clip there. So the ladder is not attached at the very bottom here, okay? I would look for things that would not allow me to visually verify. So because they covered all this connection here, that doesn't allow me to inspect. That connection is all covered. I need to visually inspect that. I got rust jacking happening in the back. I got a lot of soot and debris. So anytime I can't visually inspect that everything looks that it's been kept painted and structurally sound, there's nothing, no missing anything. So the fact that I have some wires in my way, these are obstructions, this would have stopped a 1 year. Again, I can't identify this connection, so this needs to be cleaned up, so we have to verify or load test going down. I definitely can see that some of these have popped. This one has popped. So that's an indication that the fire escape needs a 5-year, not a 1 year. So that would have stopped me from an inspection. Looks like it's leaning ever so slightly down. It's my ladder system. I'm looking at these connections here. As you can see, they've got a little bit of rust jacking happening on this one. Not a lot. No painting. You see where the water starts getting in. Treads have all this accumulation. And what does the accumulation do? Let me show you. This right here is all the accumulation, and that's accumulation. But you leave it there long enough, look, that's starting to become rust pack. And that rust jacking is not only pushing this clip, you can actually now see it's gone all the way through the clip. So it's only a matter of time before a tenant or a fireman steps on this tread, this one's going to give way. What about this one? Nope. Looks pretty good, but the fact that you're leaving and you're not stopping the water from accumulating and the dirt from accumulating here and here, this is where it's heading. Look at that. I don't know if you can see all that rust jack. So again, this would fail the 1 year. And I'm not giving an opinion on the 1 year. I'm just saying this really needs a 5-year, because there could be other things that I'm not trained on to do. This one's starting to become rust pack. Okay, rust pack. Okay, see that? This one doesn't have any rust pack, it has debris. But this one has rust pack, look at that. Okay, so this one here, showing it's starting to grow, rust pack is going to eat through these rivets. Okay? Alright, clips, debris, accumulating behind the angle clamp. As you can see here, this one's visible. So this is something I can see with the naked eye. Notice how they are cementing a lot of these connections shut, so we can't really verify. See that opening right there? Again, that would trigger a 1 year to become a 5-year. See how they're gonna, it's only a matter of time before the cement guys are gonna close that up. See the through bolts coming through the building? Those are all under a 5-year, not a 1 year. Okay? The handle, loose wires, covers. Now this sometimes is there because, you know, they don't want people breaking in, but during construction, this is the second means of egress. So if they have a security issue, that's something else they have to resolve in a different way, but the last thing you can do is stop people in case of a fire from getting out, okay? So as you can see, a lot of dirt, a lot of accumulation. Cables are the original cables. I would swap these out, okay? Because you can see by how old they are just by looking at the tips. But this is probably original hardware. You have to grease these. Look how brown that is, okay? Brown the cable is, but it's still past the 1 year. Okay, this is a 1 year. Signed 2018.
Well, you guys don't use them anymore.
November 2018. Okay? So here's the release mechanism. A lot of times you paint this red so that somebody knows that they have to put their hand outside here, grab it, pull it, and then it drops 2 or 3 feet per second, hits the ground and stays down. So under a 1 year, you're looking to come in here, verify that the window's open, and these windows have these little lock mechanisms here on either side. so that it only opens up about 6 inches. So those have to be removed because it has to be single action requiring no special knowledge. So a Reg 4 is you come out, Reg 4 annual. It's been painted. There's nothing out of the ordinary structurally because that would have been covered under a 5-year. And you walk the whole entire system, you know, from the roof to the ground. The system looks like it's operating. And you verify that that door is not going to be an issue with the fire department because that door opens up onto your fire escape ladder that you go down during emergency evacuation. So again, it's pre-existing
It's a hotel.
non-conforming. These are the things you're going to be looking for.
Coming online
This fire escape
in
was
1
not
month.
past inspection
When
at
I was
this
doing
time.
this, it was gonna come online in 1 month.
And it doesn't pass the 5-year. It's got some structural issues with the fire escape. And the rivets on this and all these connections are all original hardware. So we can clean these up and get it ready and verify that everything's good and ready for the load test, or changing all the hardware on this fire escape, including the flats, but not necessarily these. These can all be tested. It's all major structural. Okay? These need to be swapped out, that needs to be swapped out. You know, this needs to be swapped out, verification of that into the wall. You do that, you avoid the load test for the next 15 to 25 years because you're providing other evidence of strength. That's called the NFPA. The authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength. Here's your chain. So these are the things you're going to verify under a Reg 4 annual. But there's certain things that will automatically trigger that it needs to become a 5-year, and it didn't pass the 1 year. Any questions, fire escape engineers? 866-649-0333.
So,
What about that cable that's right
yeah, this is part of the, but it passed, right? The guy said he passed, right? So this is what happens when there's no system there. So this is what brings lack of confidence, and all of a sudden people are finding all these alternatives and they start burying these. Is this fire escape structure done and hasn't been kept painted? Then how did it pass? And who's watching? If nobody's watching and these papers is just coming in, and after we notify the fire marshal on that about this, that the thing didn't even pass the 5-year, guess what they did? Right? There was no questionnaire, they didn't have anything. It was all opinion. And so it was this guy's opinion that this fire escape is fine. So you can't have opinions. You have to put your assets on the line, and the one thing that he talked about at the I talked about at the end, other evidence of strength. The NFPA, and it's in all your paperwork and it's in your code, right? The authority having jurisdiction, which is now, shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength. Is that anywhere on IBC or IFC? No, they talk about materials and strength, so they don't really say the word load test, but you know who says the word load test since 1926? NFPA. So NFPA says the authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength. So, we have a couple of guys that went out to us and inspected a fire escape. Did it look as bad as this?
Nope.
So ready for load testing?
Yep.
Couple of minor things on the roof. The cantilever needed to be rebalanced. What else? A hole in one of the grates?
Yeah.
Ready for load test, right? All original hardware, 75 to 125 years old?
Yep.
Ready for load test? Any rust in any of the connections?
Just
Any internal
surface.
rust anywhere?
No.
Surface on
So it's just some surface rust. Does surface rust ever kill a fireman to your knowledge?
No.
So there was no internal rust. They walked the entire 11th story with us. So there's a minor repair on the roof. There's a cantilever that's out of balance, and she's ready for load test. So the client now has a choice: load test it or other evidence of strength. So this class is not about selling load testing. What should everybody be doing in 125 years of a building? Like you did to your electric, your plumbing, your windows, your roof, your boilers. They change them out every 25 to 35 years on average, if not every 50 years, right? So fire escapes that are 75 to 125 years old should have had those square head bolts taken out. And what do you put back in? A new hex head bolt, right? Grade 5? Don't need grade 8s, we're not putting up monster bridges here, right? So now, if there's a failure on that bolt, but you load tested it, I mean, and you signed off other evidence of strength, who do you sue?
Both people.
The bolt people. So that's why you're allowed to have other evidence of strength as a sign-off. So load test it on original 75 to 125-year-old, or change out all the hardware and verify the connection into the building, or duplicate them. You now, in case there is an accident or something, you can sue the manufacturer of the connector. And have they done that on bridges and tunnels when things have collapsed and failed? Somebody has a question, go.
What's telling us what the requirement is for the load test for the specific size of the fire escape?
Oh, we'll cover that in a slide coming up. It's 100 pounds per square foot. So 5 times 5? 25? Times 100? 2,500 pounds. There's your load test. A 4x2 platform, 4 times 2 is 8. Times 100, 800 pounds. There's your load test. So, but we hire architects and engineers to calculate those things out for us.
And you may be
Very,
covering
very
this,
difficult math. I use my calculator, but
you may be covering this a little bit later, but
Ah, yeah.
I'm assuming the load test is putting a weight factor equivalent to what it should carry on that landing to make sure that there's no failure.
correct. But I'm going to show you how they've already exceeded the requirement. So I'm going to do a quick little example here. And actually, we did that with you guys. Captain Rusty. We got 2 Captain Rusty. So if you guys have any fire escape questions, Eric and Ed, right?
Yeah.
They just showed up and they went on a full, and we walked around downtown looking for stuff, right? And so just if you have any questions, pass it by them. They were there, they know what to look for, they understand internal rust versus external rust. So they've been deemed Captain Rusty. And just ask their question, you know, hey, what's your vibe on this fire escape and such. But we're gonna cover that piece, but we did this, and so let's cover it now, because it's gonna be one of the questions coming up. And this is your concern. So we did this actually on site, and so this is when you load test it with tenants, and this is when you load test it with firemen, when you don't do anything for how many years? 100 years. These guys are trained to do what? Not to use them. And these people are never advised. Okay? How does that sound, right? For 100 years, nobody tells these people, but they seem to figure it out. Good or bad, what do? They use it. These guys are trained not to use it, because they know the 100-year history. But every now and then all hell breaks loose, and what happens to these guys? They gotta use it.
Maybe that one had a pass sticker on it.
Yeah, maybe that one.
Well, the other
So let's
issue
do the
is-
mathematics. Ready? So we were on yesterday on the 7th floor or whatever, and I said, so this is where the math. Let's do some simple load testing mathematics. 150 pounds versus 300 pounds. Okay? So what's 150 pounds? Well, that's the average weight of a person, and we have a typical 4x4 or 5x5, let's say a 5x5 platform, and they were there with me, and we were all standing around near the fire escape, kind of representing this. And I said, can I get, and the room was full of people working inside, all computers, must have been about 30 people inside that room. Can we get 10 of those people who weigh an average of 150 pounds apiece to come out right now and stand in this 5x5 box because we would block them? And what you guys say? Couldn't. But if you could, and they all stood on each other's shoulders, 10 times 150 pounds equals how much? 1,500. That 5x5 is rated to 2,500. So what's the safety factor already in fire escapes? It's almost double. So there's an extra 1,000 pounds. So we've done the calcs. You have to be 2 feet square, 10 10 feet tall, weighs 600 to 700 pounds a person, and you will almost match the requirement. Do you have such people here? Are there any giants that you guys have found? No? All right, let's get the firemen. Let's get those guys in here. Firemen weigh 200 pounds, because box of donuts. Number 2 is, you guys have your calendar out, I heard this week. See you already, right? Not everybody made it, me neither, so it's okay. So we have the 200-pound firemen with 100-pound of gear. They weigh 300 pounds. And I asked them, can I get 5 of those guys to stand in a 5x5? And what did you guys say? But even if I could, and they kind of gone, it's 5 times 300 is still 1,500 pounds. How much pounds do I have above and beyond that? 1,000 pounds more to go. So, if we have a good inspection, good bolts, no internal rust, no internal rust. You know what happens? If he signs a document that says there's no internal rust and there is internal rust and somebody gets hurt, what happened? What did I say happened to that first case I ever did in New York City? Who do you sue? The owner who hired the wrong guy. And he lied on a piece of paper because he gave it to you. What's the piece of paper say? That there's no surface rust or no internal rust in any of the structural connections. There's no internal rust. So he's putting his assets on the line because he can't lie about this. And the tenants will paint these for you before you show up. What's the easiest thing to fix on a fire escape if you have an inspection coming in 2 or 3 days?
Painting.
You paint it. But a qualified inspector will see what? Bulge. We'll see growth, bubbling, deterioration. What he can't see is how thin that bolt is inside. But he does know what it looks like inside because he's done these inspections. He's tearing these apart. He doesn't have to see what it looks like inside. And that's the lucky ones, because there's other ones where you can see the head. I mean the nut, you can see the head. But what don't you have in the middle between the two? A shaft. So this is when you step on something and it... So, does that answer your question about the 200-pound, what's a load test?
Yeah.
So, it's already overbuilt. These things were built to last 100 years, but you're supposed to maintain them, and nobody's ever maintained them. The only thing they've done is painted them if forced to. The mentality has been in the IBC, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and if I don't point it out. So when you're looking at a fire escape and you're a IBC or a owner of the property and you're walking on the fire escape, how do you walk? Because if you look up, what are you going to see? Problems. So, you look up. Firemen, on the other hand, what do you guys do? You guys are always looking up, because where do you guys go? You guys are always going up. And you're looking at these brown fire escapes, these brown cables. So, some more live load testing. Events that occur. Everything gets out of control, firemen are forced onto it. Parades nearby. You know, back in the 50s when there was no AC, guess where everybody slept? That's an old, some of you,
That's some good sleep.
this is it's like a typical West Side story, New York City. That's what, oh, by the way, you know what this is? You guys are not the only ones dying. One of our guys, his father, 57 years old, fixing a fire escape like this, exactly like this. That's not him, but that's exactly like this. Tell 7 stories to his death. Fixing the same fire escapes that he taught his son how to fix. And then his son had to go back and finish the fire escape. So, it doesn't kill tenants, it doesn't just kill firemen. You know what it'll kill? Everybody. Oh, did I mention, do you guys have a vaping problem here? Where's the new de facto, because what's fire escapes now starting to reemerge as? It's the new smoking room. Because you smoke in my building, you're gonna get fined, evicted, or whatever. So you can either go outside and smoke in the front, or where's the best smoking area you have that's close at hand and literally right there on the spot? So everybody's smoking and vaping on fire escapes that haven't been certified. So you think there's some more accidents coming? So it's now the de facto vaping, smoking room.
California, that's an exterior patio.
This speaks volumes, you know what I'm saying? That we thought had laid its head, but it's actually come up for the strangest reason, and that is because it's now the smoking room for everybody. Everybody's using it as a smoking room. How do we know? And just in Boston 2-3 months ago, 4 kids went out, the fire escape collapsed, just fell off the building. 2 jumped back in the window. 1 fell only 15, the girl fell 30 feet. They all survived. But they're all in court right now. Doing what? The owner hasn't looked at his fire escape since 1985. So you got rust? Can you see rust from here? This is a paint job. So somebody who doesn't know how to, if you walk up to this fire escape and you write a scrape and paint violation, this is what they're going to do. They're going to scrape and paint. But you know what's underneath it? Is this. So what's the 3 things you got to write whenever you write a violation from now on? Because 1915 they wrote scrape and paint, which is correct because the thing was only 5, 10 years old, 15 years old. They've been using that for 100 years, and when you guys finally got the maintenance, you guys kind of copied that, because I've seen some violations, and that's all you say, scrape and paint your fire escape. What is the 3 things you got to write on your violation? Repair if needed, because guys, they always don't need a repair, so inspect it, repair if needed, load test or other evidence. Right? And so you're going to get a call back when they get that violation in the mail, and they're going to say, what? For the first thing, what do you mean by inspected? I've had my 1 year. What do you say?
I have a 5-year.
I need a 5-year. Then you can continue on with your 1 years. Okay, so who's that? Goes, any good or bad engineer, any good or bad architect, any good or bad architect that's acceptable to the city official, right? Repairs. Who can do the repairs? Ornamental iron workers. They're the best. Welding guys, can they fix the fire escape? No. With a welding machine. But if you siphon all the gas out of their welding machines, do they have clamps, vice grips, and tools to fix a fire escape with bolts? Welding guys. So any welding guy can show up, and as long as he leaves his welding machine at home, can they fix a fire escape with bolts? Yeah, they can. So remember that. So if there's a welding machine roaring, not only are they violating the lead law from the EPA, which came out in 2010, but they can just not use their welding machine and change bolts all day long. Can they work? So ornamentals, who are still building fire escapes new to this day, welding guys, can they fix it without the welding machine? The answer is yes. And by the way, just so you understand the welding part, I'll go into a little bit more detail. You can fabricate a rail in your shop with welding, but when you install it on the fire escape, you bolt it to the fire escape. You can make put a tread together in your shop with weld, but when you put it on the fire escape, you bolt it.
Because the bolts can be inspected and replaced as needed later during the inspection if they fail due to rust, weather, and exposure.
Correct. And when you're welding in a shop, you have your certs, you have a certified welder, it's under a controlled condition, you're using a MIG welder, maybe not a stick welder, and it's a much controlled environment. So you can weld fire escapes components together at a shop. So you can shop weld, field, bolt, install. Clear? So, you write a scrape and paint, you're not looking underneath. So that's why you do inspect, repair if needed. Does this need repair? And then load, at the end, load test or other evidence, because who says load test or other evidence? IBC or IFC? Who says it? They never do. So until you know, this is like the Rosetta Stone of codes. If you don't overlay all the codes on top of each other, you can't read this. So is it pretty clear that the NFPA said it best back in 1926? Load test or other evidence. So is there room not to load test and have this huge $5, $10, $15, $20,000 expense? Other evidence means what? If you rebolt your entire system and re-verify the connection back into the building, will you accept other evidence of strength?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Manny?
Yes.
So if somebody gets in and says, I'm going to change every bolt in all the treads, there's not going to be any internal rust in this fire escape as verified by a design professional, and I don't want to spend, I'm going to take some of the money I was going to spend on load testing and use it for what? To repair my fire escape.
But under the repairs, would that be done by a licensed contractor and under what license classification?
Good point. So, ornamental iron workers, welding guys, general contractors who work with metal buildings.
Okay, so.
Can an owner change his own bolts? Yeah, I've seen them. This is nuts and bolts. This is not major technology. But in some cases, you guys will let owners work on their own personal property, but not on an investment property. They need to have some sort of license for that. But let me ask you a question. This is the permit question. Routine maintenance. To scrape and paint a fire escape, I need a license? Do I need a permit? I got to change, I'm going to scrape and paint my fire escape and change one bolt. Do I need a license? Do I need a permit? So, fire escapes for 100 years, have you ever needed a permit to paint it or to change some bolts? Because it fell under routine maintenance.
So owner-tenant responsibility to maintain the safe condition. But
Right.
that leads to the question, like you talked about, grade 5 bolts, grade 8 bolts.
Your
They go
design-
down to Ace Hardware and buy the bolt, we don't know if it's structurally rated to
If the fire escape
withstand
needs, if the
2,500
fire
pounds.
escape is a 5-year and it needs a report, you're going to get that. So here's the data sheets on the bolts.
Okay.
So I think what you're saying is, oh, how does the building inspector through a permit, or how's the fire department through a permit? No, but you're hanging the whole thing on this guy, who not only has his workers' comp and liability insurance, he also has errors and omissions insurance. Because in case he misses any of this, what happens? So this is how a typical report looks like, okay? A 5-year repaired typical report is going to look like this. Does it need a permit? Nope, because it's covered under routine maintenance. We're altering the building and putting an addition. Do you need a permit?
Yes.
Yep. You're penetrating the building for some reason. You need a permit?
Yes.
Yes. So there's the point where you need the permit on that specific activity. But now, he's wrote a report, the client shopped it around, got the best price. What's he do? Write the report, come in 3 months later, or does he have to monitor it with 3 to 5 visits during construction or during repairs? He monitors. So he shows up at the beginning while they start the job. He shows up in the middle in a surprise visit. He shows up at the end, because what's he signing off on the end if they're doing a full refurb? He's signing off on other evidence of strength. So what's he got to monitor? The whole project. So 5 years have to have a design professional overseeing the whole process from beginning to the end, because who do you meet at the end of a project when the work is all done? The contractor or the design professional? Who's handing you a certificate, either a load test or other evidence of strength? You want to meet the vendor, the general contractor, or the ornamental guy, or you want to meet the guy who's signing the dotted line? That's the guy you gotta meet. And what sheet does he fill out? The same sheet. 25 questions. And every one of the questions, we'll go into the questions one by one, it covers every component on a fire escape. It doesn't say, hey, the fire escape looks good. it's your opinion, right? No, it says, the treads are good, there's no internal rust. The railings are good, no internal rust. The upper and lower clips of the stringer are good, no internal rust. The brackets into the building, whether you have the three types. You have a through bolt, you have embedded, or do you have legs to the ground? The footings, everything. It's either it applies or it doesn't apply, and it's a checkbox. So whether you get a good or bad engineer, get a good or bad architect, right? And they all have to fill out the same form, what are you quickly going to be able to do with some of the bad ones? You're going to eliminate them. There's too much liability for them to sign that questionnaire. Now, some of them, and I've had this happen a few times, I ain't going to sign that document. That's not a state document. That's not a state regulated, you see. Listen, somebody who's got a diploma on the wall for 40 years, he goes, you don't have to use this form. If you want, just copy the questions on our form onto your letterhead and answer them accordingly. So does that sidestep everything? If they question your paperwork? And they will, because all you really got is the code that now just is coming in 2020. It says every 5 years I need a 5-year certificate, by a design professional or other. Here's an industry standard questionnaire that you should be using. We'd like to see this because we know that everybody, and I think you guys have standards in practice. A lot of fire departments have standards and practices, correct? For a lot of different things, they follow some sort of standard in practice, right? So whenever you get into a little question, don't forget, elevators get load tested every 5 years. They physically stop the elevator and they load test it with weights. Let's just put that off. Just say, you know what, why don't you guys join Firescapes in for the next 100 years and not load test elevators anymore. Sprinklers. For the longest time you had all these buildings that had sprinklers that work on a couple of floors, but not all the floors. But yet they still remained open. Try to do that now. You know what pushed that? Lawsuits. Elevators falling and killing people. Sprinkler systems not working and burning down entire buildings and killing tenants and firemen. All right? So far so good on the class? Let me tell you what an inspector does and what these things are for. It's not for load testing. So this is the kind of rust we see from underneath as we climb up. That's why when we go do an inspection, we climb from the bottom up, get to the top, and then we videotape all the way down, finger pointing everything that needs to be done. Not everybody's going to give you a video, but you should ask for one. Otherwise, they minimally got to give you photos. If they say it's bad, show me photos. If they say it's good, show me photos. Should they do a video? I think they should, because basically you only have time to watch a video. Okay? So, but this is when you're walking up a fire escape. And the treads, which is what hurts a lot of the firemen and the tenants, is the tread. This is the ping pong test.
Okay, I think that's it. I'm gonna stay down here so I don't get hurt. What I'll do now is I have my red, and I'll highlight it in red. To say that this is an emergency life threatening issue that the owner needs to take care of.
How about that tread?
As quickly as possible.
That's good.
So you guys understand why the ping pong? So every time there's a 5-year guy doing his job, he's going to mark it with red. And then the ping pong is for your safety or the inspector's safety?
Both.
For the inspector, so you guys are not going to be there because we're going to mark it up. But this is what's going to mark it. And then whenever possible, not only do we mark it, we try to block off those stairs. For whose benefit now? The tenant. Can they still break through this and get away in case of a fire? Can we put this all around that missing tread or that fallen tread? And we also get people blaming us for breaking their fire escape. And so when we tap a fire escape with a tread, and it's only got that piece left in there, she just goes. So the ping, when it pings, we've got a little bit more meat on it, you know what I'm saying? You know, the meat could be, that's a solid 3/8. It'll ping. When it pongs, it means it's deficient, it doesn't have a good clear connection, but sometimes it doesn't fall. But we don't break treads with this, because whenever somebody questions me on whether or not I've broken their tread, I say, hey, the inspection is for free if you can break another tread for me. And if you try to use this hammer to break a good tread, it doesn't have to be perfectly good, it could even be one that has a little bit of rust. It'll hurt your arm trying to really shear, you know, a bolt that's going to be 3/8. Okay? So this is for our protection to make, and we mark it. And so now we have a life safety concern. Who do we call if we have a life safety concern?
Us.
Well, in LA, our license requires it. If we don't do it, we lose our license down there. We have to call the captain of the closest fire station. He's supposed to come down, take it over from us, because he now deals with the owner and whether or not they're going to do a fire watch, whether or not they're going to, and do whatever. So that's not the norm yet here for you guys, but you guys, that's something we're required to do. So you should have it in our document that says anything fire, you know, the life safety, you have to report immediately to the closest fire station or back to whoever's going to be in command of the fire protection part. So that's very important. Otherwise, can these people milk this thing for 6 months to a year? Oh yeah. Okay. So what do we have here? This is a piece I didn't bring with me, but actually, this is a fire escape I took off at school, kindergarten through 8th grade. Kids use this fire escape every day. It was about 4 feet wide. Every day they'd go up and down this fire escape, and guess what the method of repair on this was? Okay? So I just wanted to show you just what has been the cheapest. So let's do some simple math. Ready? Typical 5-story fire escape, the terrible 3s, will either cost you $3,000, $13,000, or $33,000. Right? Well, I got a violation. If you wrote scrape and paint violation, guess who he's gonna call first? Joe Painter. Joe Painter comes down and says, hey, let me look at this fire escape. I need to get it painted. Yeah, because I got a scrape and paint violation from one of the fire prevention guys. He goes, okay. He walks up and down and says, hey, I can paint this thing for... And he says, oh, by the way, I had a couple of loose treads up above. He goes, oh, really? Okay. You should get those fixed and then I can paint it. He said, okay. So he calls the welding guy. The welding guy shows up and says, oh, yeah, I need to get this painted. I just need you to fix a couple of loose treads and anything else. I need you to, you know, anything that's broken, I need you to weld back, even though you can just put a bolt in it. So I need you to, you know, any one of these things, just put a piece of steel in there and weld, you know, bridge welded with, and just melt some rods in there. And he goes, oh, I can do that. And I can paint it too, because he's trying to steal the job from the painter now. I'll do it for $13,000. Because it's not just 1 or 2 threads. You got a few things up there. And, you know, they're full of rust. And is he going to bring bolts or a welding rod with him?
Welding rod. Welding rod.
Welding rod. Because bolts means I have to separate it, take all the rust out. And so he says, so the guy who got the violation from you that said scrape and paint, got a $3,000 quote, got a $13,000 quote. He goes, oh my God, this is crazy. Let me call the ornamental guy. The ornamental guy comes down and says, oh yeah, my dad's been building these for a while. What you have is you have internal rust here. We need to open up every one of these clips that has internal rust. We have to remove all that pack rust, which is called rust jacking because it jacks 2 things apart. And we have to replace certain steel because it's worn out and thinned out. And some of your rails, the tubes are paper thin, and it won't, and I think you might have a problem with your through bolt into the building because I noticed water damage, and the through bolt, you know, is rotting on the inside of your building. Guy goes, how much? That, including the paint job, $33,000. So the owner goes and grabs his paper and says what? Let me read this thing again. Scrape and paint. Who got the job? For 100 years. So now the painter comes back in, yep. And the guy goes, listen, you got the job, but you know those loose threads, can you fix those? And what's he pull out? Duct tape, zip ties, or he may know a friend, or he may do it himself and do what? Does he pull a fire permit and a fire watch and get a hot permit? Other people. Because you don't need permits to do this. You don't need licenses. You don't need any of these things. For 100 years, by the way. So, you know, we're having this class. You guys can just forget about, just continue on. We're good for another 100 years here, right? Otherwise, the 100-year history has happened. 1915 is when they stopped building new fire escapes in mass quantity. Because it didn't make sense, because you know the main reason? It wasn't that it wasn't a good idea. Nobody was maintaining them. You guys had an earthquake out here. So you know why some of your fire escapes are great? And only a few of them are in really bad condition? Because they're all galvanized. So some of your fire escapes here are in great order. They're ready to go to load test because they've been galvanized, but some of your fire escapes are black metal steel, primed and painted. So that's what the load testing is going to be about. So we came in here, and what we did is we used this as a showpiece, and I took it from 4, I brought it down to 2, and I traveled to a lot of the shows that we do that the National Fire Escape Association does, and we show you all the wrong things you can do. So we take in and we welding witch doctor the thing ourselves. We show you everything you've already seen. And what have you seen? You've seen guys that are too lazy to put a clip underneath because there's too much crap underneath. They put a clip on top and they weld it here, and they weld every little piece. They, let's see if my, very low power. No. Buried in the ground. Put my fist through that. Okay? So I took this piece to basically use it as a piece to show you just what happens when guys come in, welding witch doctors, under a permit. Will the building inspector ever see him? Will the fire marshal ever go by and check in on him? How's he doing? So why can he do this? Because he can. Right? Underneath, what do? Square bars. You stick some square bars underneath and you weld it here and you tack. Remember, I told you I have a master's degree in reverse stupidity. Not only do I know how to do it right, but I know a million ways to do it wrong. Because who's watching? No one. I got a perfect score. So far, so see the welds? I can change those bolts, or I'm a welding guy. Do I bring bolts to a job, or I bring welding rods to a job? So I just weld the nose. Okay? That's, oh, by the way, you want to see my certs? You want to see my welding certification? Does this guy look like he has a welding certification?
No.
Because who's working at some of these welding shops? You know, iron workers, boiler makers, ornamentals, welding shops. And what happens is the grade of skill set starts to. This is a self-taught welder.
Harbor Freight.
This is not welding. We call this. This is called melting rods. You know, you're not welding anything. You're just melting a rod on here. Might as well use a glue gun. So this is the most important part. This got replaced, right? This used to be kindergarten through 8th grade. Kindergartners used to come out of this door every day and come down and use the kindergarten yard right here, right? So I saved this bottom piece and I saved that top piece. I have a couple pieces that I use as show and tell when I go to teach a class, and that's what got replaced. Who told me to replace this? Was it a building inspector that was like, it's about, get this thing out of here? Was it a fire marshal that walked in? You know what? It's about time you change this fire escape and get it out of here. No? Was it the building maintenance guy that says, please, can you change this? I finally got the funding from the principal to change it out, and you got, just between the Christmas break, I need it out and I need a new one in here right away. And no longer coming down where kids were running underneath and smashing their skulls on all the steel here. So it used to come out straight here, and put it off to the side. Okay? So who can do it? Ornamentals, welding guys without welding machines, construction workers, construction companies that have some skill set in the metal trade. You know, the metal building guys? They'll do this all day long. So is there work for people in your community? This is why you don't want to let welding guys fix fire escapes.
Welders working next door may have been working on the building's fire escape when they sparked the deadly fire. Fox Undercover revealed Wednesday that fire escape hadn't been inspected in 10 years, even though inspections are required every 5 years. Investigative reporter Mike Bodette digging up some new exclusive information tonight. Mike? We looked at the entire Beacon Street block where the fatal fire
area
discovered. Just like 296 Beacon Street, most of the fire escapes there are overdue for inspections. It turns out the city doesn't have any mechanism in place to track building owners violating the rules and hold them accountable. Mayor Walsh is not happy.
So that's the mayor freaking out and saying this thing, but he, you know what they forget to mention? There's two guys where. So these welding guys were fixing this fire escape, caught this guy's shed on fire. The winds were 60 miles an hour that day. Blew the shed, blew the fire into his building. So this guy's building that was getting the fire escape welded, very little happened to it. The 5-story next to it, because these are all brownstones next to each other, blew a hole, started burning into his building. And as the firemen came in, this is what you guys do, is you break all the windows to air out. The 60-mile-an-hour wind did what? Sucked the fire into it, and these guys were on the ground floor, and they got fire killed them, or there was the smoke? Smoke. And so what, you know what Boston did? Because it's very important that they react. They said, oh, from now on, you cannot weld anything in the city of Boston without having a fire watch, and you have to have special training for. Was that really the problem? And I called and I said, hey guys, I've been teaching this for 10 years. Guess where I'm having more success? In Boston or in cities like Seattle, Portland, New Jersey? Because they're still allowing people to weld. Certain states still have they still allow welding to happen. Is welding an acceptable means of repair for a fire escape? No. Nope. Because you're violating the EPA, first of all, because there's a lead law. You can't burn anything with lead. But number two, that's not how they were built. Okay, and I'll explain that in a second. But now, here's the issue when it comes to improper inspection. So the company this is an 8-story on the corner of Broadway and Howard in New York City. Pretty busy street?
Yes.
So they had a woman inspector doing a 5-year on this, and the people who inspected this fire escape 5 years before was her own firm. Okay? Now, didn't get any training and how to, so she was just using her design professional training as an architect or an engineer of what to look for. And guess what the whole fire escape is held by? So this is what happens when you let fire escapes be welded.
Solo, designed to save lives, claimed one when a metal section came loose and fell on 2 people. It may not look like much, but it weighed an estimated 150 pounds. Fatally struck in the head was 58-year-old Richard Marchhart of Garden City, Long Island. He lived here with his wife and his high school-age daughter. 2 sons are in college. The shocking way he died Friday afternoon was not something relatives and friends here felt ready to talk about. As they mourned, work crews were back where it happened, erecting scaffolding on the sidewalk and keeping people back, while inspectors were seen jumping up and down on fire escape landings and steps.
That's a ping pong test, or that's a ding dong test?
Look at his harness. Looks like it's in good shape, sir.
Wow.
But it wasn't. Obviously not.
Investigators say it was a private inspector who accidentally dislodged the piece of metal that hit not only a lunch cart, but a young female artist. She was seriously injured by the metal. She was on her way here to a studio at the New York Academy of Art on Franklin Street. Death and injury related to fire escapes, and with so many of them in the city, this is making some pedestrians nervous.
You don't think about the fire escapes falling. I mean, you don't even realize they're bogeys. Yeah, it's scary.
I don't get too old, that's what I'm thinking. Owners of the 9-story commercial building were issued a violation for failing to have proper safeguards. With the fire escape out of commission, owners hired personnel as fire guards who would be expected to guide everyone out of the building in the event of a fire or other emergency. In Soho, Dave Carlin, TV 1055.
City law requires all buildings taller than 6 stories are inspected and reports filed with the building department every 5 years. A 2013 report on this building in question found no unsafe conditions.
Wow. Tell that to the dead guy. But I inspected this bird. I'm actually the expert witness on this case. And I inspected all welded. Rust, all, and every connection, everything is just welded, welded, welded. And after this, guess what they did? They re-welded everything back. Right? So, a few months later, they're like, hey, we're gonna do another news piece. And so, they're in New York City, they're concerned. And so, oh.
It's supposed to be a safe way out in emergencies, but some experts say some fire escapes are themselves a danger that puts people at risk. CBS 2's Marcia Kramer demanding answers tonight. You see the train already dislodged by itself? How much rust is inside that? I wouldn't go on this fire escape.
It was an eye-popping afternoon with nationally recognized fire escape expert Cisco Meneses.
Come over here. I look straight up.
There's a hole. As we walked the streets in downtown Manhattan, it was also too easy despite dangerous conditions. Should this fire escape have violations?
Yes, it has been kept painted, but it's not structurally sound.
Heavy rust was clearly visible, and something else we saw over and over again, air conditioners.
That's an obstruction for the firemen to get in, as well as the people to get out.
Any obstruction, from flower pots to art installations, can impede a safe escape in an emergency. But even more frightening, the structural integrity of fire escapes designed to save lives in some cases has proven deadly. Earlier this year in Soho, a tread fell from this fire escape and killed one pedestrian and injured another. And in May of 2011, an entire platform gave way from this Midtown building.
You can see here the evidence of corrosion. That's what caused the collapse.
Another case I was on, elevator guy
The victim fell 12 feet and needed multiple surgeries. The building eventually settled the lawsuit for millions.
You got to live with pain for the rest of your life.
According to the Department of Buildings, there are about 200,000 fire escapes in the city, and they are all required to be maintained by building owners. In buildings 6 stories and above, fire escapes and building facades are inspected by the DOB every 5 years.
We have a limited number of inspectors in the city. We do the best that we can.
And they were clearly concerned when we showed them some of what we found. This is a clamp. How do you feel about that? It's holding fire.
That's electric. Okay.
So what about situations where you have clearly rusted out parts?
We will write violations for failure to maintain when we run into those conditions.
This year, there were more than 5,000 311 complaints to the DOB, as well as the Department of Housing Preservation and Development and the Fire Department, who also does regular inspections to make sure firefighters are safe.
If you feel a fire escape is dangerous or unsafe, we don't expect our members to go on.
The fire department says they will put up ladders.
Instead of saying they're trained not to get on,
firefighters have been seriously injured
they have
on
a
fire
choice.
escapes previously.
It's a dear price to pay when an owner does not carefully maintain the fire escape.
The fire escapes on some of the buildings can be 75 to 100 years old. Our expert told us that some of the bolts holding them up have never been replaced. If you see a dangerous situation, call 311. I'm Marcia Kramer, CBS 2 News.
So with that, let me just add a few additional notes. In New York, anything over 6 stories is regulated by a 5-year facade inspection. So most buildings in New York are built 6 stories. So it's 7 stories and above need the 5-year, but if you have a 6-story, you have a 5-year mandatory facade and or fire escape inspection? No. 2012, the code came out, IFC. Has New York adopted it? No. Okay? So that's just to show you, it's not just here, it's everywhere. Okay? And the fire escape's now dropping pieces from the sky. So the fire escape, whether somebody's using it to vape, inspect, or whatever it may be, that's why it's important that who's ever going to get on this fire escape is doing it properly, because as you ping pong, the last thing we're going to do is ping pong and make a tread fall to the ground and hurt somebody below. Because we have a process, either with putting up cones, having 2 people, or knowing that the piece is going to fall. We have a way of controlling it so that it doesn't. Let's talk about cast iron. I did a ping pong test on a cast iron fire escape. Cast iron has been outlawed. If I find any cast iron treads, you know what I'm supposed to do to those? Replace them. You know why? Because when you ping them, they shatter. And I got that quick training that when you ping pong them, and they have microscopic fractured hairlines that you can't even see with all the paint on it, when they go, and I was doing I think it was a 10-story building, and I was on the 6th or 7th floor, and it ping ponged, it shattered, just kept falling down and down and down, and it went into a parking lot area. It missed everything, but I had 10-15 seconds worth of, oh my God, and I couldn't ping pong any of the rest. So it clearly states, even in the New York code, that any cast iron is found, you must replace, because it's brittle, it becomes brittle. So, so that's the important part of these cases is just that right now the insurance companies. So a couple of cases I've been involved in, just recently, LA, electrocution happened on a fire escape. And that individual sued LA for $55 million. He lived. Now the electrocution was from power lines being too close to the fire escape, which belongs to what? PG&E. So they settled for 20. So that's the kind of, so one of the questions you have on there is there any power lines within 10 feet? Because it's just not them touching it, it's also when you guys are firefighting, what happens?
Water and electricity don't play nice.
Water and electricity. So we have a question, because what can they do? Do they have to move the entire electric, or can they house it?
Insulated.
They insulate it. Got it? So but you need to know these things. So our inspectors are letting you know, because it's one of our questions. Okay? So another case here in San Fran. Some of you might remember, it was a woman that fell through a fire escape opening that had a slide ladder. She lay there for 18 hours until they found her. But the hole was too big. They settled for millions of dollars because the fire escape had an opening that was over 5 feet wide. The minimum is 2 feet, no more than 3, to access the ladder portion only. The rest of the rail is missing. So if you have a hole in the ground, what do you need? You need a railing all around the whole thing. They had railing on 3 sides. How easy was that case to win? So we've already exceeded over $100 million in payouts, including Philadelphia. And I know you guys are limited how much you guys pay, but the shame or just the public ridicule that you're going to get. But if you have a system in place that says, no, we have a fire escape process, and here's what needs to happen, and it's tied in with other things such as sprinklers, with alarms, it's tied in with housing inspection, health inspections, it's tied in with yearly inspections. Because every time you go in, do you care to see the fire escape? Never. You always ask for a copy of
affidavit.
So no matter what you're doing, you're pulling a permit. What do you need? I need a copy. So you can have the building department assist you from now on. So any permit pulled on a building, what's it need? It needs an affidavit. Why? Because you're about to put people on that building. And OSHA says, which is not something you're going to regulate, but OSHA already states that you must have 2 means of egress at all times in order to rent your property, work on your property, and fight fires in and out of your property. We'll show you that code in a second. Got it? Let's talk about the pieces. So you now know. I'm going to show you how rust grows. First of all, you take any 1/4-inch piece of steel, you let it grow untouched, it'll make 1 inch of rust. So 1/4 of steel grows to 1 inch of rust in about 25 years to 25 years. I mean 25 years to 50 years. It all depends, it's on the sunny side, on the shade side, right? So 1/4 will make 1 inch. That's called jacking. So when 2 pieces of steel are together, they'll give of each other and they'll both make up 1 inch. That's called jacking. When you jack something apart. So rust jacking. So when something is bulging, is because there's a piece of rust in between that both contributed to. In order for them to contribute to it, they got to give of themselves. They got to give steel, so it's no longer 1/4. That's called deterioration. Corrosion causes deterioration. So sometimes this material needs to be replaced, not just repaired, it needs to be replaced. Who knows that? 1 year or 5 years?
5 years.
5 years. So let's take a simple. Let's learn how rust grows. So 2 pieces of metal, the clip of a tread and the side of a tread. You know, the stringer. 2 pieces of steel. I have a bolt. Goes inside. This bolt that goes inside starts like that, 1/2 inch or 3/8. Right? Has a nut on side, super tight. When I bolt things together in the shop, do I prime everything before I bolt things together? No, I don't. When I weld things together, do I prime things before I weld things together? No, because it'll burn. And when I weld raw steel, and I start putting it together, whether I use bolts or whether I use, I'm making a tread or a rail, whatever. Do I prime the insides? The 2 pieces? No. So what's the first place that it's gonna rust? Because as soon as I make that component, what do I paint? All the outside, right? And as long as that piece never gets air or water, because you need both to make rust, what happens? It's good. The bolt is good. She's thick. But then all of a sudden you guys have something out here, I don't know what it's called, sun? We don't get as much as you guys do. And sun does what? Heats things up in the summer, cools things in the winter. You guys got this other crazy thing. What's that called?
We don't have earthquakes.
The shaky shakes, right? And so what happens is that it breaks the seal, because paint is brittle. As soon as paint moves in any direction, that's why you must maintain and keep it painted at all times. Why? To stop water. So when someone says, why do I have to paint my fire escape? You say, to stop water from getting back into the internal of a connection. So does everybody understand that? Right? So that's what's in 1915, that's how these were all built. Keep it painted every 2 to 3 years, every 3 to 5. And did they?
No.
No.
Question with the painting thing. So I've seen fire escapes that look like they've never been painted. So should we?
Yeah, that means it's done. But don't forget, some of these you have to know the silver is a galvanized. You look at a fire escape that's been painted, and then it looks like it's lost some of its paint, and it's all silver. That's galvanized. Galvanized is a protectant. You don't need to paint galvanized. You should, because the lifespan of galvanized is 40 to 50 years. It will last 75 to 100 years if you keep it painted. So, but if it's brown, garbage. So everybody understand that why heat and contraction? Great. Now let's take a look at how these things happen. The V. You get a V in one of 2 directions. The V is up or the V is down. So as she does this, she'll start opening up the top, and that's how water gets in. You get a V. Okay? For some reason, sometimes the thing's super tight, and she'll actually grow out of the bottom. It's a reverse V. Still rust jacking. When you, during our break, come up here and look at this. This is both forms of V. right? And what's inside now? No longer this nice 3/8 bolt. What's inside? What's that down to? Like a 16th? A 1/32nd, right? So, or sometimes it's not, there's nothing there, and basically when you step on it, she falls away. You still see the head, you still see the nut, but what don't you have in the middle? No more shaft, right? So does everybody understand that? This is what we have. So with that, you have a variety of bolts that I have here. You can see, because you'll never see that, but who knows that it exists? The 1 years or the 5 years?
5 years.
So the 5 years already knows what these insides look like, because as soon as he sees the V's, he knows what the inside looks like. He doesn't need to open it, doesn't need to test it, doesn't need to do nothing. He already knows. Does a 1 year know?
No, but he can refer to it.
No, he has to. It's right in the book. If you have a problem, the 1 year's got to call a 5. Right? So, let's talk about the through bolts into the building. A lot of stucco out here, guys. This is a proper through bolt into a building, and it's usually 12 inches long, and there's a plate on the back, and there's a bolt, and it makes a sandwich on wooden structure. Some cement structures will have this also. Usually this is 3/4 or 7/8. Look how thick that looks. Try to shear that, you can, and not, you can tell it's old because it's got a square head bolt on it, because they're square. But sometimes they, like that hotel did, they start skimming the outside to do what? Why'd they skim the outside with stucco?
Make it look new.
To not fix the inside. So either the wall is crap of wood, and they stucco it so they don't have to fix the wood, or the whole brick is messed, and they stucco the outside so you don't have to do it. But what's happening inside? Between the brick and the leak in the roof or something, and the water's coming down that little 1/4 inch between, because the outside veneer is not structural. So the brick face is not structural. It's the 2 to 3 courses of brick behind the beautiful brick face that is structural, that this is usually embedded into or through bolted into. So when the water gets in behind here, what do you see? You see a beautiful bolt on the outside, and you say, that looks okay. But a lot of times when this is happening, you know what comes out of here? Rusty tears. Well, who knows what that means? The doctor or the nurse? The doctor knows what's going on. And he says, you've got a questionable through bolt that either through load testing we have to verify or needs further investigation. Questions on this so far? Time check?
4-2.
Is it 11 or 12?
11.
Doing good? Doing good. You have some more questions? I think I'm boring too many people here, but sometimes this is eye-opening, you know?
How many failures can you have on a 1 year or would trigger a 5 year?
So you have to have a 5 year. So no longer backwards. You never start with a 1 year. You start with a 5 year, then the 1 years go for 4 more years. Because then it's another 5 year, and during a 5 year, you're doing a 1 year. He's doing a 1 year during a 5 year.
Okay, but after you've done that 5 years, say 2 years later, you go through and you find something that you suspect.
Oh, you won't.
Okay.
A proper 5 year, 2 years later, a 1 year guy sees some problems, this guy is going to get called back by the fire marshal. So you told me, you know what I'm saying? So the 1 years are double checking his work, because they test this system. No rust grows in 2 years. Nothing gets inside a connection in 2 years, ever. It means he doesn't do his job. Go back to Steve. Yes, question?
What about some tenant, just damage?
Oh, tree damage, yeah, that's different. 2 years later, a tree landed on it, nobody told anybody, and the 1 year guy comes out, and it says, do you have a 5 year? He says, yes. And you know how he knows there's a 5 year on it? We're going to get into this in a second, because he has a tag on your fire escape that says what? Passed. What year? Well, it'll tell you what year it passed, and when the next inspection is due. So he knows it's a 5 year. But a tree damaged, truck hit it, something happens. And his first question is, does he have any structural questions on his 1 year? No, he has opinions. Is there anything that looks structural and that triggers automatic 5 years? Because should he drag his opinion a little bit further beyond his license and his insurance and something was to happen, now what happens? Who goes to court? The 1-year guy. Who's going to drag the 5-year guy into court anyway? So the 1 year's track to 5 years. Okay, but during a 5 year, you do a 5 year, it includes a 1 year. It's already a 1 year. A 5 year and a 1 year is the same. So you have to do both that same year. But then and who can do the 1 years?
Accepted by city attorney.
Right? So, rust, and I'll try to, there's rust in here, I'll try to make you tear those bolts apart, you can't. Because there's rust weld, there's just expansion, this is rust jacking, and then like spaghetti, when you stretch it, what it's going to do is going to get thin in the middle, right? So this is rust jacking. The V'ing in 2 different directions, it's all here.
The smoke, the flames, and the frightened faces, all in a firefighter's line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him,
Scared to death.
but the fire escape that broke underneath him.
When it ran, we just came away from the building.
And our investigation found across Massachusetts more unsafe fire escapes, rusty, deteriorating, crumbling, broken. And what state officials didn't know, the system they set up to keep fire escapes safe is also falling apart.
The potential ramifications are disastrous.
So let's look at this one. This expert ironworker is licensed to build, maintain, and inspect fire escapes. So that over
My
there,
evil twin
for
brother,
months,
just
we examined dozens of them with alarming results.
Looking at this today, would this pass inspection?
No.
In dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings.
Rust is actually eating away the metal of the fire escape.
Right.
And the bottom line?
It'll get weak and then eventually it'll fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one missing bolts, twisted metal.
Would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one, a broken tread.
So how dangerous is it for the people inside this building?
This fire escape is definitely going to put somebody either in the hospital or it's going to put somebody in the cemetery.
Fire escapes are so critical. The state building code requires them to certify for structural accuracy and safety every 5 years.
Roll it back.
And that safeguard is simply being ignored. Here's proof. We chose fire escapes at random in Boston, Somerville, Cambridge, Worcester, and here in Quincy. We checked building department files.
But there's no fire escape certification.
To see if building owners had submitted their mandatory inspection reports.
There's no certification in this one either.
Bottom line, not one we checked in Quincy had been certified as safe. And the director of inspectional services admitted because of staffing shortages, the city has no idea how many other fire escape owners are breaking the rules.
And as a result, do you know how many fire escapes in your city are safe or not?
Well, I don't know.
In Worcester, not one we checked was certified. In Somerville,
No.
4 more fire escapes,
Did it fall through the cracks? Yeah.
not one up-to-date certification. And again, no system for keeping track. How can they get away with it?
I guess the shortest answer of all is because we don't have the resources to sit here and follow up on these things.
If structural deficiencies are reported, local building inspectors can actually evacuate residents until repairs are made.
Would you talk to us on camera about this?
No, but when we surveyed 24 more communities, most admitted they had no idea how many fire escapes were certified. In Taunton, inspectors told us they haven't seen a certification in 25 years. Northampton officials said, it's a cold day in hell when that happens. In Cambridge, too, not one of our test buildings was certified, and the official in charge would not come out to discuss it. There are more than 8,000 fire escapes. Again, according to inspectional services, not one we checked was certified. Officials know they are required to enforce the building code, but they admit they don't always know if owners are breaking the law.
The building code is being ignored.
Right, but it's difficult to write a violation when you don't have knowledge of something like that.
But state officials say for a critical issue like this, communities should know. And they warn, the Massachusetts building code is not optional.
Does it worry you that these fire escapes are not being certified?
This is an important issue and should not be ignored.
Building department.
After the smoke and flames begin, it'll be too late to learn you've got no way out.
I can't stress it enough, Hank, that these things have to be maintained and someone's got to be watching.
As a result of our investigation, state officials will now issue an alert to local inspectors. Meanwhile, if there's a fire escape on your home or office, you can contact your local building department to make sure it's properly certified. In the newsroom, I'm Hank Philippi Wright.
I did that in 2003.
Whoa.
So it falls upon deaf ears, and they have a 5-year rule. But they keep saying that the owner's mandatory requirements, which means who are they relying on it? The owner. You guys have these inspection requirements and all these things. So the only way these fire escapes are going to get back online in the next 3 to 5 years, because it took 100 years to screw this up. You're not going to fix it in 3 to 5 months. It needs 3 to 5 years to get back, and you need to start marrying this to something, right? So let me ask you a question. Does it make sense for you to marry this to get a copy of a 5-year if you're going to do a sprinkler test? So add it to the list. Just make a checklist request to all sprinkler companies that are coming in, say, hey, before I'll allow you to do a sprinkler test, please have a 5-year certificate from the owner before you start. So that's the first start. Smoke detector sign-offs. That usually starts generating money, right? Smoke detector sign-off, you can occupy the building. Question?
I worked in a plan check in San Francisco. A good way to get them is when you see the plans and all the money is up front and people are willing to spend money, you put it on the plans. Make sure you have that 5-year certificate on the fire escape in order before you start your project on the building. Then it's up front, people are more willing to do it, and it gets done.
And that's exactly what happened here in Boston after this. They made it, and instead of putting it at the front, they put it at the end. It says you can't close your permit unless you have a 5-year affidavit. But it's the chicken and the egg. If you want to follow OSHA, you fix it at the beginning or at the end? At the beginning. So when you're doing permit process on anything, I'm changing my bathroom, need a fire escape affidavit. Or I'm changing the electrical panel, need a 5-year affidavit. So get your building department in that says any permit pulled. It has nothing to do. You can't occupy that, you can't do any work on that building because you have to have 2 means of egress. Right? Because who starts fires? Contractors. So you say you need to have a fire, before you can start, not only is it our requirement here for the permit process, because it's just a checklist item, and they're more likely to get it done. And we have an answer in case the fire escapes a train wreck, and it's going to slow up production. We have an answer for that. And OSHA does too. We're going to cover that next. So, the most important part is you have to stop marrying things. So, smoke detectors, right? When can I occupy? Once the smoke detector is signed off, right? So just add it to the checklist. What's he need to do? The guy comes in and the building is beautiful, everything's great, nothing done to the fire escape, and he says, I'm going to sign off on the smokes. And people are going to start occupying in 3 days. They're going to start coming in, right? So what's he asked for?
5-year.
A copy of the 5-year. There's a problem. The guy, nobody saw this coming. And if you don't want the mayor or anybody else calling and freaking out because we got tenants moving in, right? They're going to start saying, hey, you're slowing down money. So what's the answer? Again, it's a department decision whether or not to issue the smoke detector sign off or issue it with conditions that says you must fix your fire escape or certify your fire escape immediately, and we'll give you 15 days or 30 days. And if the fire escape's a train wreck, you can use alternative means of egress, which is scaffolding. So will you stop the money train if there is a problem with the fire escape? Or can you use alternative means of egress as it states so in OSHA? Right? So let's look at this. This is where I'm going to have Alan come in and speak a little bit about some of the codes in regards to, as you guys know, in 100 years buildings go through 3 types of changes. change of use, right, Alan, that a lot of times will trigger upgrades, change of occupancy, conditions, additions, alterations. So sometimes these fire escapes, which is on the outside, is pre-existing non-conforming. But they sometimes do certain things on the inside of the building that sometimes triggers the need for you to remove the fire escape from the outside and bring two means of egress inside. When is that identified? By an architect. So just so you guys know, there is a process here that in 100 years, there's been some buildings that have gone through these changes and the fire escapes were supposed to be upgraded or removed, and they never were. What do we do now? Now that's up to you. That's called horse trading. That's where the contractors, the owners, they come back to the city officials and say, hey, I know in 1987 we did a full gut job. We got new sprinklers, new alarms, new everything, and the fire escape should have been upgraded to at least 42-inch high rails or whatever it may be. But what are we going to do now? So that's a decision between the owner, the city officials, or the AHJ in charge of the situation, and the architect who has to create and because in some cases you're going to have to horse trade. So we don't decide whether pre-existing lawfully non-conforming issues stay, you do. And the building department does. Because these things will come up. We've got some stuff that's out there. Anybody ever hear of law, grandfathered in or lawfully non-conforming?
Existing non-conforming.
Okay, you're gonna get it a lot. So what's that mean? That fire escape that we're examining outside, which is 36 inches high, which has bars that are 8 inches apart, or it has only 2 lines, that's pre-existing non-conforming. We inspect it as of the date of its installation, not what it's supposed to be today. So we are not going to make it 4 inches, we're not going to bring it up to 42, we're not going to increase the size of the treads. So unless there's a major change before that, but we'll know way ahead of that and it's already on the permit. Otherwise, when we inspect an existing fire escape with a ladder to grade, even though ladders are no longer allowed by code, we certify the ladders, we certify the cantilevers, we certify it as of the date of its installation. And if it was 1915, 1935, 1955, that's what we're certifying. So that's why, be aware of the word grandfathered and lawfully non-conforming. Now every now and then we get a fire escape, it's full of chicken wire, pieces of wood, crazy mixes of some fiberglass the guy is using, and we're not going to accept that. So if something's been rigged, we basically say it's one of our questions. Our second question is the fire escape factory made or homemade? You've got a few homemades here that showed up in the middle of the night without a permit. Okay? The second question on a 25-point question for a 5-year, is there anything that you need to speak with the building official about that is pre-existing non-conforming concerns that they have to render an opinion in writing? Because we don't want the owner yelling at us, we want them yelling at you. So that's what, this comes up a lot of times, but a majority of the time it doesn't. It's all factory-made fire escape. All the codes. 2012, IFC, not adopted till 2020 here. NFPA, the authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted, and that's 101.7. So if you need this, that's what it is. To approve any existing fire escape stair that has been shown by load test or other satisfactory evidence of strength to have adequate strength, which is that materials and strength in IFC and IBC, right? But does it say the word load test there? Does it say the word report? So sometimes you have to overlay all the codes, right? Because will you accept an opinion on this? Or will you accept a load test on that? Right? Because there's some unknowns we'll never know. By the way, if I have a building that's 125 years old and I have one of these in there and I've got rust, can I just leave it alone and 4 to 6 inches to the side of it, can I embed a new Hilti bolt 8 to 12 inches deep into a masonry block wall, have all the data sheets that you need for it, you know, given, right? Because now penetrating the wall, who do I have to sign up with? Building, to show that there's penetration, and put in Hiltis and negate whether the existing ones there look like this or look like this. Do I care?
No.
Have I achieved other evidence of strength? So do I want a load test? Because there's some cities, like Portland, Oregon, that not only want you to refurbish the whole fire escape, they still want you to load test. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
They still want a load test after you've proven other evidence of strength. Is that fair to the client? Because NFPA says either or, Portland says I want both. So is there any incentive to fix this stuff, or just only load test it? So once I've done other evidence of strength, how many years can we put off the load testing for? Our recommendation is that most fire escapes be put off load testing for 15 to 25 years. Because in the lifetime of a fire escape, in 100 years, we think it should load test that building every 25 years. Because now we're not only testing the fire escape, but what else are we also testing on that? The building itself. So we recommend a properly maintained fire escape should be load tested, but every 25 years. So when we put off the load testing with other evidence of strength, for how many more years are we going to not load test? Because you get that question now. Hey, in 5 years I have to load test again? What do you say? If you did a full refurb, do I need to load test in 5 more years?
No.
10 more years? 15? 20?
Maybe.
Have you been keeping it painted? Is it super tight? Is it all galvanized? Right? So if all of a sudden you're getting good, good to excellent reports on all your stuff, will you put off load testing for 25 years? And then to avoid the load test in 25 years, what can I do?
Redo it again.
Change the bolts? Even though they're good, but because it's a new style bolt. Yes, question?
Well, it seems to me some of this is subjective to environmental conditions.
Right.
Because, for example, with San Francisco right here, or Oakland, if some of our buildings are immediately adjacent to the saltwater environment, there's going to be a considerable acceleration of corrosion due to the reaction.
Even with galvanized, yeah.
Even with galvanized. Or other plated metals that may. So that's not necessarily a constant that it would be 20 years. Maybe if in our municipal code we should write it in that load testing and structural integrity be I'm not sure how to put that. Done.
It's an envelope study. It's a wall study. But I'll answer that. I think I know where you're going. When we take this connection apart, when we take this connection apart, and we prime the interior of both of these now, right? And we put in a new grade 5 bolt, for example, right? We also are going to inject it with 35 to 50-year paintable silicone. What's that going to do? So we just waterproof the connection.
So that's what I was going to add. We do ductile iron underground water supplies. We coat things in mastic in order to protect them from corrosion. Add the, what do they call it, dielectric anode onto. Is that kind of stuff going into the fire escapes now? Are you seeing that for environmental corrosive?
Not yet. Well, all you have to deal with is the connection, because all material when you're building a fire escape, minimum thickness is a 1/4 inch or greater for everything. Can't use 1/8, can't use anything. Everything's 1/4. If the failure rate issue on fire escapes, is it a external paint issue or an internal rust corrosion issue?
Internal corrosion issue.
So once we've done proper 5-year, 100 years later, guys, and we've put the metal back, we're not putting back corroded metal, we're putting back replacement metals and wherever it's needed, priming the interiors now leaving them naked before they go together, and then we're injecting 35 to 50-year paintable silicone in that connection, and what does that allow?
Seal.
Flexibility. Yeah.
it'll allow for it to heat and contract, right? Because the paint may be rigid, but the caulking is flexible. So now you put up the biggest issue. So how confident are we that you're going to sign off on a structural, or that an engineer or an architect is going to sign off on a structural when there's silicone inside the connection? Because there's no separation, there's no jacking of any kind, and that's what will allow him to say, you know, we feel comfortable with other evidence of strength for almost 25 years.
And you're listing the NFPA section for inspection, but is there an NFPA standard of installation for fire escapes and hardware?
No. See, they did that in 1915. They said, okay, no, we're not going to build fire escapes anymore. And they took all the books that had all this great knowledge in it. You know what they did? They had a bonfire. And they burned everything. Because they expected these buildings to go down when?
50 years after construction.
50 years later. But what did they invent during those 50 years? That you guys have seen in all your buildings. Duct tape, zip ties, some bubble gum, spray paint, right? And so what happens is these fire escapes just went along with it, and they've been under the cloak of no permit, no licenses. It's a routine maintenance, scrape and paint, because you've been writing violations. And when you guys finally picked it up in 2012 or 2020, depending on how you're going to look at it, you asked your counterparts at building, hey, what kind of violations should I write? And they said to you, scrape and paint. But you're now going to write
inspect, repair if needed, load test, or other evidence of strength, right? That's it.
Done.
So there is no, to your knowledge, there's no NFPA standard or any other accepted reference code for standard of installation and maintenance?
Correct. So, yes. Wow. Yes, question.
San Francisco has AB 19 that talks about construction of modern fire escapes.
So you guys wrote a municipal amendment?
I'm not San Francisco, but
okay.
AB 19 is something you can find on the internet, and it talks about modern fire escapes.
Perfect, thank you.
In San Francisco, I suppose.
Right. So I think, maybe I'm asking, there's two questions you're asking here. Is there a repair guidelines? No. Can I build a new fire escape today? Is it somewhere in the code? The answer is yes. So I would, when I'm making a new fire escape, there's a code for building new fire escapes in the U.S. So 24 inches wide, 8 and 8 rise and run, or 36 inches wide, 7-11 rise and run if it's more of an egress in and out. Oh, but now in San Francisco they allow inclined ladders, which is not staircases, and they can be 12 and 4, and so new ones. The code is there. It's always been there. How you build it nationwide. How do you maintain it? All burnt in the fire. All gone. There's no rules to maintain. That's why in the reverse engineering, I started putting all this stuff together for this type of class. To basically say that what we call the welding witch doctors have had the fox has been in the hen house. And what are we doing now? Get out. Okay? So this is all the codes. And by the way, I'm going to show you the International Building Code in 2012 stated, when it came to routine maintenance of fire escape, it said CIFC. But 10 out of the 50 states pulled it back into themselves. Just, you know, and Massachusetts was one of those. Pulled it back in and says, oh, we're not giving it to fire yet. Guess how many classes I have taught to the fire departments in all of Massachusetts? 0. No. I've taught for 15 years the building departments. And we have some cities have taken it upon themselves to basically now wait for codes. Now they just created ordinances, they just did it on their own. This is the very important for you to know what an other is. Just not an other in fire escapes. There's other. There's others in solar. There's others in underground wiring. There's others now in towers. There's others. So for you to be classified as another, they have a technical writing, and it's basically saying that sometimes you're going to get something that's unique. So you could be an other in clock tower repair. right? Only another, you know what I'm saying? So, but it says right here, it requires the owner agent without charge to the jurisdiction a technical opinion report. The opinion shall be prepared by a qualified engineer, architect, specialist, laboratory or fire specialty organization acceptable to the fire code official, such as the National Fire Escape Association. So, Alan is a registered architect. But he's one of the few in California, he's the only one, that is a certified, registered fire escape architect. But do you need to have a certified, registered architect to do an inspection in Oakland? Or you can have a good or bad architect inspect in Oakland? Because the law says, they didn't say a certified special guy with a golden thing on his head that says, you have a golden thing here? No, so you guys understand? So that's what this is. And by the way, it has a final to this. It says, acceptable to analyze the fire safety properties, operations of the building on the premises, appurtenances thereof. So this is the appurtenances. Anybody knows? Appurtenances means flag poles, things stuck on the outside of a building. So there's specialists for that. Billboards. Did we walk by billboards yesterday, guys?
Yep.
What was the concern?
Load testing.
Load testing a billboard. Why? Because nobody's inspecting those things. And if somebody has a heart attack up there, how do you guys get them off?
Ladder.
There's no ladder to the ground, right? You have to use an apparatus.
Aerial.
And then when you get up there, what do you have to stand on?
Platform.
A platform. Nobody's load testing that stuff. Right? And the fire code official, back to you guys, is authorized to require design submittals. So sometimes you don't like the other. So what can you make him do?
Drawings.
You can make him bring in a design professional. Prepared by the stamp of a registered design professional. So if for some reason somebody wants to become another with you, but it's still not 100% there, what can you do?
Drawing.
Just have him be peer reviewed and have his information be stamped by a design professional who has insurances and liabilities, and he may or may not want to do that. He says, so he says, what's the doctor say to the nurse? You can give a flu shot, but when it's time to opening somebody up, it's right. So that's what the other is considered. OSHA 1910.37. You don't enforce this rule, but you know who follows this rule to avoid millions of dollars of fines and fees? Every construction company in your city. And it says, exit routes must be maintained during construction, repairs, and alteration, which means if you have a fire escape on your building and you're pulling a permit, before you can start, what must you have? So, fire escapes are fixed first or last on any renovation of a building? It says so right here, during repairs or alterations, employees must not occupy the workplace unless the exit routes required by the subpart are available and the exit of the fire protections are maintained, or until alternate fire protection is furnished that provide an equivalent level of safety. Who decides if it's equivalent? Fire, building, OSHA, they agree, right? And so what does that look like? That looks like this. So this fire escape has a huge fire escape on the back, but guess what they have in the front? And the difference between, if it's a non-occupied building, the official may allow construction scaffolding, which is 24 inches wide, a little steeper. But if there's occupants in the building, and sometimes building officials are very picky, they care, I don't care, even if it's a I want 36 inches wide. And that's what this says, 36 inches wide with railing all the way to grade. Why? So I can have my permit, so I can work. Because who starts fires?
Construction.
Construction guys do. And who fights the fires and tries to get their guys out of these holes?
Fire department.
Fire department. You're like, where's your second means of egress? Because the first means of egress is clogged or whatever the situation may be. And they don't have one. You guys have seen these, right? They sell these on the internet. Okay? So, The bag ladders, write this down, a bag ladder is a third means of egress. Legal as a third means of egress. It's an illegal second means of egress. So can I get one of those and put it in my kid's room and teach my kid how to get out? The answer is yes. These ladder here that sometimes you can get from Jomy. You guys familiar with Jomy? Jomy. They make these in aluminum. They're out of Belgium. They have some representation here in America, and they make these aluminum ladders that you hit them and they pop out. But what's the problem? There's no starting platform. So it's an incomplete fire escape system. So can I use a Jomy in connection with a platform? The answer is yes. Can I use a Jomy all by itself, just coming out of my window? And if you want to prove the point, when somebody's like, this thing's been here for 15 years, you're just busting my cannolis over here. Say, great, listen, show me how to use this. Have the owner climb out the window and get on that ladder.
In the dark.
Yeah. And blow smoke in his face. You know what I'm saying? So, just so you know, that's what makes it dangerous. Now, if they can get out to a platform, and then they have a Jomy-like system, it's called a fold-out. That's either made of metal or aluminum. It's allowed. Now, if all of a sudden one of these show up, and there was never an approved means of egress, it's illegal, because now you can't use ladders, you have to use full staircase to the ground. Or in some case, and if it's in San Fran, I think, you can use the inclined ladder, because it's not a staircase, it's an inclined ladder, you can use 12 and 4. Because all the buildings are much tighter together.
The incline ladders are allowed by the existing.
In all California?
International existing. Everywhere. So that's why you got the incline.
But in the rest
of your building,
primarily, just so in the 50 states, I've only seen the incline ladder in California. The incline stair.
Well, this is in the IBC.
Yeah.
The international existing.
Right. But in the rest, in the 49 states, they want 8 and 8, rise and run, 45 degree, 24 inches wide, because these you can go down to 18 if I'm not mistaken. Right?
On the ladder.
On the ladders. 18. Whereas on a 24-inch wide, it's 22. So a little mix. It's really about what's your insurance company going to allow. Just you can go the minimum you want, but. So let's take a look at all the things that are out there, guys. You might recognize some of these. Ready? So you have ladders that are incomplete to grade. You know what that is? That's a law that says up to 9 feet. You can stop any ladder at 9 feet. And then the rest of it could be what?
Fall.
No, a drop ladder, fold-out ladder or something, right? So they've abused the law, and everybody stops at 9 feet and does what?
Nothing.
Oh, is it to grade?
Yep.
8-year-old kids, 4-year-old kids, and little old ladies, can they jump 9 feet?
Nope.
So whenever these get found, we check off question number 2, pre-existing non-conforming, we have a problem, it's not to grade, and all they have to do is put another ladder on top of this one that's a slider. Somehow released up there, you release it and it just slides, it's like a guillotine, just slides down to the ground. Easily fixed. Do they want to fix it? No. Why did they remove those? Break-ins, all kind. You have a million reasons why they were removed. They all need to come back. Okay, guys? So, and as you can see, damage, there's ice. Very familiar with this? Right? Have you guys ever seen one of these where somebody takes a Home Depot ladder and just nails it to the side of the building?
That's pretty damn.
Is that pre-existing non-conforming, or is that question number 2? We need to speak with the, because what do they need? They need a platform. This is an overnight illegal apartment that showed up. And so a lot of times they have to rework not only the fire escape system, they have to rework in your city because they've been paying taxes as a 2-family, but renting it out as a 3. And all these things come up. Who finds that out for you? We do. It's 25 questions. We find these all the time. And we just step back because now they've got another issue. They basically, somebody 35 years ago did this, Can they keep it today because it's grandfathered in? Can they sue backwards if they want to? Sure, you can sue anybody you want, but you have an illegal 3-family that is currently registered with the city as a 2, and when they're not collecting their taxes correctly. Sliders. This is a guillotine ladder. You release it at the top, slides down. You have a lot of these over here that looks. Somebody was looking at the attic one time. Says, I think I can do these. Outside, full fire escapes, parking garage. Parking garages, they need to be inspected. Right across the street, what we find on that condemned building. But the fire escape treads were ready to give way anyway.
That's why it's condemned.
Got it? So all parking garages, right? Full metal stairs to the ground. This is more like your buildings, right? So some of these, as you can see, I mean, can you get any wider? But what's for sure not under inspection in that? 5-year. So you can keep painting it white. It's like a cruise boat that shows up when it gets into port. What's the first thing they have? Some poor guy out there doing what?
Clean it.
Painting it white. Why? Because the rust stains on a metal boat out in the ocean is horrific. Okay? So I just wanted to tell you, the code is very clear. I think we'll use San Francisco. The 604. I want to show you guys how the building code said this. 604 says this because 604 is not being used correctly. The 604 says all safety devices. This is the 908. I need the 604. So the 908 for San Francisco. So in case Oakland ever wants an ordinance, but you already have the 5-year rule anyway coming in 2020. You guys don't have this. I only gave a few to San Francisco. I think we're going to have a few that will sprinkle out. We have 10. So if you want to take one for each city, well, I'm familiar with it. It says all metal decks, balconies, bridges, connections. Have I mentioned fire escapes yet? This is very important because now even the 604, you guys need to review because the 604 is not from the fire, not from the building, it's from the housing. And it says all wood and metal decks. Have I mentioned fire escapes yet? Balconies, landings, exit corridors, stairway systems, guardrails, handrails, fire escapes. So when you look at this iceberg, fire escapes make up what part of the iceberg? The part that sticks out of the water. But the rest of it is down below because it clearly states right here, or any parts thereof in weather-exposed areas of apartment buildings, hotels shall be inspected by a licensed general contractor, a structural pest control licensee. You know why they have that? Dry rot, and that happened over there in Berkeley, was it? A licensed professional architect or engineer verifying that the exit system, corridor, so is that outside or inside now? Inside. Balcony, deck, or any other part of the exit system is in generally good safe condition. So is this an exterior inspection on the 604 or is it an interior exterior investigation?
Interior exterior.
And what have they really been doing in San Fran?
Interior.
In San Fran? They use the 604 for the exterior and the interior. Two separate people. I've had people show up and there are people who just do the interior version. And who are they? They tend to be general contractors. Who does the outside? Ornamentals. Not ornamental. Design professionals such as a structural engineer and architect. So you got to get that back together because it says, do you get two reports? Do you get an interior report on the 604 and an exterior report on of a 604? Or is it supposed to be a combination? It's one 604 inspection, maybe utilizing two professionals. A general contractor for the inside view for mold, rot, and whatever it may be, and an interior walkthrough, or an exterior. And it also says very clearly at the very end, inadequate working order and free from rot, fungus, deterioration, decay, or improper alteration. What's that mean? They've modified certain things inside. They've removed fire escapes. I think we had one here in Oakland where they removed an entire fire escape off the back of a building. Because a lot of these buildings are like rectangular. They have a fire escape here, fire escape there, and then a stairway inside in the middle. Why is that? You get in, 75 feet, 75 feet. Sometimes you have a fire escape at the end, and the fire escape, there's a stairway next to it, and there's another stairway next to the other end. Yet they still have to have a fire escape on the outside. Why? Because the guy who has the last apartment, in order to get to the stairway, which is, there's two in this hallway, you can't go through your first stairway to get to your second. So in order to make that apartment legal, they have to use the second. They have to have a fire escape on the outside. All these things are going to come up. Who knows this? The 1 years or the 5 years?
5 years.
So just so you know, just on San Fran, one thing you may want to look at is how this is being addressed correctly, because sometimes you're not getting two 604s. Once you get a 604 at the housing, that's it, they're done on the 604s, you know what I'm saying? So realize that we were always trying to find out why they wanted a pest control and why they wanted to jump. But it's clear, they list all the people, but this is really a two system, the interior and the exterior for the 604. That's what we believe. That's something that, and I believe there's a class being held on December 4th, tentatively right now for December 4th. I spoke with, it was Mary?
Mary Shea?
Okay, and so that's something that needs to cover, because again, it's with housing, it's not with building, and it's not with fire. But it's great that it was there, because you know how many other cities in all of California have a 1 unit 5? None. So whether this was administered correctly or wrong, guess what they had? They had a policy, they had something. The 1 and the 5, okay? So we only put it on here, and we can give you some copies of that. It's an ordinance if you want to, because that's what sometimes happens. You can't wait for the state to react, you just do it yourself. So I think this has been in San Francisco how long? Anybody know how long it's been? 15, 25 years?
You know, this is a building department issue.